Sox fans, hey, welcome back to Hot Takes and Heaters. He's Danny Miller. I'm Nick Murawski. This is the White Sox centric, the Major League Baseball portion of the FutureSox programming. We do this live on Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. On Twitch, on the FutureSox YouTube channel. Please subscribe, pass it along to other Sox fans. We do have a game going on live here on this Tuesday night, May 28th. We'll touch on it here and there as get to a bunch of other things that have been going on with the Sox team as they were swept by Baltimore. Pedro had some comments. We got some injuries. All that good stuff. Currently, as I record, the Sox are losing to the Blue Jays. What is it? Seventh, top of the seventh, something like that, Danny. But anyway, we'll talk about it. But
sixth, actually.
There's a lot. There's a lot to get to. But how are you, buddy? Happy belated Memorial Day.
Right back at you, sir. Doing okay. All things White Sox aside. As you and I were talking a little bit off camera before we started the show here, had a great start to Memorial Day weekend. Had a pretty good weekend, other than the fact that I got another sick doggy on my hands.
Yeah.
Same one that was going through some vestibular issues probably about 2 months ago ish. Had another episode, so we're dealing with that. I got to carry the dog up and down the stairs, and she's not eating. And I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff going on, but as far as the White Sox go, on the other hand, now we have some things that really dig into tonight, huh?
Yeah.
But, before we do, how are you doing, man? I heard you had a little incident of your own.
So I've been in the suburbs for a little bit now. Lived in the city proper for 15, 16 years, and you don't deal with a lot of yard work when you're in the city. It's not extensive. I had a tiny yard in Chicago, like very little maintenance. When you get into the suburbs, man, you've got some yard work on your hands, some landscaping on your hands. And I have found around my property that there is some poison ivy, poison oak, and I stumbled upon it last year towards the end of the season. It wasn't too bad, but it was a problem. And there you go. I found a new area of the yard recently, and I got hit with it good this time, man. It's no joke, man. If you've ever had it, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never had it, don't. Just get an app or something where you can take a picture of plants, and it'll tell you if you're ever wondering if you just should be pulling weeds in that area or doing anything. But man, what a weekend. So it's been a pretty itchy, uncomfortable weekend.
Yeah, I can imagine. I too have had run-ins with poison oak and poison ivy. Poison oak doesn't really do much to me. I had a little minor rash, a little itchy stuff going on. And same thing, I think I had a run-in with sumac when I was a kid, and it was not a big deal. But man, the ivy, brother.
Yeah.
Ooh, the rash that leaves behind. You are uncomfortable for quite some time, especially if you're one of the people that are most susceptible to it. So my condolences to your rashy areas,
Yeah. It's like, you got to talk about this team. You got to watch this team. And I've got
White Sox give me rashes.
I've got enough rashes. Yeah, I got a rash. That great Big Lebowski line. So yeah, I'm on 2 antibiotics. I've got a balm, and I've got a oral steroid. So how about that?
Creams and salves.
Yeah. Man, I don't even know where to go first. I could give you a bunch of thoughts, and you tell me, man, where you might want to head here. Of course, we had the Crochet outing this past weekend, which was great. I mean, he's been kind of turn things around after a few dud starts. Sox gets swept by a tough team, a team that's built, for the postseason. You get Grifol popping off, saying some things about players being flat, wasn't happy with the performance, doubled down on it before the Blue Jays series. Players chirping back, Corey Lee saying some things, Gavin Sheets said some stuff. And, you got Clevenger scratched, the guy that was going to come in and eat innings. We were all shaking our head, what's going on? And this guy's got sore elbow stuff, and we don't know what is going to happen with this guy. So threw a lot out at you while we also again have got this game going on here. But where do you want to go first?
Well, we might as well get the hottest topic, at least in my opinion, out of the way. It's the one everybody's been talking about. We might as well start fast and hot here and just go with Pedro's comments and some of the reactions to those comments, and maybe even not just the player reactions, but some of White Sox Twitter and other media personalities and whatnot. And
so you want me to give you some quotes, Danny? Do you want to set it up here with some quotes?
I mean, you can do it. I can do it. If you've got them in front of you, by all means, go ahead.
I've got some of it in front of me. Grifol basically, highlighted Crochet's start recently, which is a no-brainer. I mean, he's looking pretty dominant. I mean, he's like must-see TV for the White Sox. He's what Chris Sale used to be. I mean, there were moments when it was Quintana when he was kind of the only one, but really Sale, Rodon in 2021, the first half, Dylan Cease 2022. So this is where kind of Crochet's at right now. Small sample size, early in his career. He's already like in innings weird land with, oh my goodness, you're in uncharted territory here, friend, but it's awesome to watch. So great effort by him. Grifol basically said, guys, we're effing flat today, and kind of left it at that. Didn't have a long statement. Jim Palmer, who's Orioles legend, baseball legend, he comes back on Twitter X and says, wow, Pedro really kind of throwing his guys under the bus here. We had a great pitcher on the mound. I mean, he is very tough to hit. Good pitching beats good hitting any day of the week. And frankly, the Sox don't even have mediocre hitting. Okay, so they just ran into a tough competitor. Corey Lee bounces back and says, I'll let him, meaning Grifol, comment on his statement. He's going to feel the way that way. And obviously we have a different feeling. He's entitled to his own opinion. I think that's a valid reason. It's nothing to hide. It's nothing to hide about. So I'll leave it there. And then we'll get to what Grifol doubled down on Monday. Were you in camp of Lee? Were you in the Grifol camp, Danny? What did you take away from it?
Well, I just find it funny that right now is the time that Grifol decides he wants to kind of throw this back at the players. And the reason I say that is this team is not built to be a winner, and you only can do so much as a player if you don't have what's being asked of you. So in that respect, fine. But for Pedro to go out there and kind of throw his players under the bus, I believe it was Dan Bernstein.
Oh, sure.
Said, it was a lame and facile way to kind of throw the blame back on the players. And I kind of agree more with that sentiment than I do with Pedro throwing it at the players. It's one thing to say that the players are bad. You don't have the roster, and they really don't. We knew going into the season that they don't. It's another thing to take what you do have and botch that. It is not difficult, in my opinion. I mean, this guy makes the lineups every day. He leaves pitchers in to die. He takes pitchers out when they're cruising. He uses situational bullpen guys in situations they don't belong. I'm sorry, Pedro Grifol, you suck. You're just as bad, if not worse, than the players you have on your roster. And for you to throw anything in their faces is just hot garbage, in my opinion. So yeah, I kind of like to see your take on that. And we'll move on.
I thought it was okay. So, Ozzy used to get up in arms about stuff. He used to call people out.
By the way, I'm going to start early tonight.
Yeah, I knew this is the type of episode where you're going to have to. We definitely need a counter on this episode. So, where was this a long time ago? Where was this back in April and May, where there were some flat games against pitchers and opponents that they should have beat. They should have had a better effort against. They should have been better prepared against. Baltimore's a really good team. through a really good pitcher. I don't know if it was a desperation move by Grifol of, well, I got to say something here. I got to call them out. I don't know. It was almost kind of awkward. Like, why choose now in this situation to do it? And I wonder if players, frankly, just don't respect the guy because he was never a player. He was a career minor league player. He's coached forever in a lot of different roles, and I know has been well respected by guys like Savvy Perez, who's on fire right now for the Royals, as are the Royals as a team. But anyway, he's been well respected. A lot of different coaching positions. Never a manager, of course. We've covered this. Everybody knows it. You watch him. You just follow this guy. You understand he's never managed before, and never played. And he protects veterans to a fault, putting Benintendi up on a pillar, literally and figuratively, for no apparent reason, refusing to make Corey Lee really the everyday guy. This whole alternation with Maldonado is ridiculous. Has thrown Lee under the bus before last year in Colas, and his track record isn't good with young guys. It's weak to me at this point. It's very weak. So he goes and doubles down on it on Monday, asked about it in the media, to clarify, would you like to take anything back, what have you.
I think that was his exact words, is he actually said he was going to double down.
I'm going to double down. And he absolutely said it. And then he goes on and says, it's all about respecting the uniform, respecting the opportunity to be a major leaguer. It's a privilege to be here. Obviously, everyone in this building has earned the right to be here, but you still got to earn the right to stay here. I would say to that, look yourself in the mirror, guy.
Yeah, thank you for taking the words right out of my mouth, by the way.
I mean, I think we're all thinking it. And anybody that's been following this team over the last couple of years and following it closely, the folks with us, live, the folks going to listen the audio version later, Sox fans are damn smart, and you can't fool Sox fans. And we smelled this a long time ago. Like, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and take your own medicine, man.
Yeah, 100,000% on that. Most of us were saying that he probably shouldn't, make it back this season, let alone, it as far as he has into this season. And I believe it was Lawrence Holmes again in that same show that we were just talking about with Bernstein, and I think what Lawrence basically said was that it sounded like Pedro was trying to get fired. And do you get that feeling, or do you get the feeling that this is a guy who's trying to save face from getting himself fired? Do you think he's trying to throw the blame at somebody else and trying to do whatever he can because he feels like he's on the hot seat finally?
I wonder if someone said something to him, maybe that he talks to, that he respects in his personal life, that he looks for mentorship like a Tony La Russa. I'm not saying it was him. We know he refers to Tony La Russa, the consultant, somebody he speaks with regularly. If there's somebody else in his coaching world that's like, hey, this is what you got to start doing. You kind of just have to start calling people out. He might know. He might very well know that this is it for him. Whether
sure
it's
feels like it.
The end of this year or maybe even sooner. Maybe they said something to him like, after this homestand, like, you're gone. We're making a change.
There's a lot of Sox fans. Though, I'm sorry.
Well, if I'm him, I'm begging to be fired. I'm like, get me out of here. Help me save face. I mean, the longer this goes on, the worse it looks for me. And this wasn't a Getz hire, even though we all know that Getz was kind of like the managerial whisperer and talked this guy up, and this was his guy. And we know how Jerry feels about Getz. Ridiculous as it is, but we know how he feels about him. So, and I'm not saying, you're going to have to bring in a manager. You move over Montoya. You slide over Montoya. And I'm not saying Montoya's the future guy, but you cut bait, get out, get this guy out of the organization and move on. As soon as you realize that something is bad for your organization, okay, you got to move away from it. Something that the Sox don't do very well.
Well, yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, even if somebody is speaking to him, like you say, maybe he's got that mentor in Tony La Russa or somebody else that's close to him. If they're telling him like, hey, this is what you got to do. I don't know that if the person is telling him that meant you have to do it publicly in the media. Like if you need to call somebody out, do it in the locker room. You know what I mean? If you need to sit somebody down and let them have it, do it behind closed doors.
Which is what he used to do, Danny. This was very uncharacteristic of Pedro Grifol for doing this kind of stuff.
And I don't know. Maybe he is doing those things. I don't really know. But the fact of the matter is you're the guy who makes the lineup every day. You've got guys that are clearly struggling, and you've got other guys on your roster that barely get any playing time whatsoever. And you can throw the players under the bus, but you're the guy that puts them in the position. The best are supposed to put them in the best position to go out and win every game. You got a rookie pitcher that comes up, and we've had a couple of them in the last couple of weeks here now where guys are making their first start, their debut start, tonight being one of them. He's not a rookie, but he's a first start in a White Sox uniform. You would think that we would give you the best possible lineup, and I'm not saying that this isn't. This is probably one of the better lineups we've seen in the last 7 days tonight, but you're putting out these lineups that make absolutely no sense. You want to continue hitting Andrew Vaughn in the 2-hole. You want to lead off with Benintendi when I don't get it. Shuffle a few guys around. Sit Andrew Vaughn down. If you don't want to send him down, sit him down for more than one game. You know what I mean? You have guys that can play these spots. And speaking of Andrew Vaughn, I would think that, there's a lot of talk about him going up or staying down or going down or staying up or whatever it is. And I don't really know if sending him down is going to do him any good. But I know for a fact that and you probably do too, back in your playing days, when guys were struggling this bad, some of them, they won't tell you now. They won't tell you during their playing days, but there are some superstars out there that have had some moments where they got sat down because they went through an extended slump. And they'll tell you after your playing days are over, like, hey, I went through that slump. And, I wasn't going to tell anybody that I wanted to be sat down, but I was relieved when I was, because nobody's putting more pressure on them than themselves.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Is Pedro Grifol showing his confidence in his veterans? And this is the reason I bring it up, is because you talk about how he's overly loyal to some of his veterans. There's a lot of managers that do this. There's a lot of managers that give their veterans, most managers will give their veterans a chance to break out and find their way. But you have to recognize when that time has come and gone, and you've got to do what's best for the rest of the guys on that team, because the rest of these guys, even if they're not going through struggles, would like to get a win every now and again. And losing over and over again is enough to damage your entire team. Guys that are performing well, they're not going to be happy about that. They're going to place a lot of pressure on themselves to try to help these other guys break out. It doesn't make any sense. The guy needs to go, plain and simple.
Yeah, I don't get the mentality of what is it really going to matter. Obviously the umbrella thing is Jerry. Anything under Jerry, it really doesn't matter. Well, yes and no. Like there's some little thing. Jerry's not going anywhere. So there's things underneath the Jerry umbrella that can matter. And if you feel like Grifol is not at all part of the future, because that's what this year is all about right now. Okay, Sox are god awful. It is about the future. Okay, what is going to help this team moving forward? Decisions for the off season, winter meetings, even let me back up, even trade deadline, and then into the 2025 season. What around here, player, personnel, organization, anything? What do we have here that really is worthwhile of investment? To help move this franchise, this organization, into some winning days, into the positive, into going in the right direction. And if you don't think, and I can't believe you would even think that Pedro Grifol is really the guy you want, to build this team, the crop of young guys that are going to be coming up, whatever decisions are made moving forward, you want him. That's your guy. I don't believe it. I feel like that's an unserious decision, which is very on track with the White Sox. So if you feel that way, it may be painful, it may be awkward, it may be just, you got to do it. You've got to absolutely move on and be clean.
Sometimes you got to rip that Band-Aid off.
That's what it feels like. And I wonder if these players, if some people think, well, if by calling them flat, like that's going to spark them, that is going to light a fire under their ass. They're going to
It's
start
pretty
playing
much
for
obvious
me.
that he pissed some people off.
I think so, Danny. I think it did the absolute opposite.
Yeah. We've been talking all year. Everybody, every podcast, every blogger, every sports writer across the country that does anything with the White Sox whatsoever has been talking about how the White Sox are going to be sellers at the trade deadline because they don't see some of these guys being part of their future. How's it any different for the manager? That's all I really want to know. How is that any different for the manager? If he's, like you say, if he's not part of the future, see you later, dude. You offer nothing.
Yeah,
you offer absolutely nothing.
And again, we could point the finger at obviously a ton of performance. I mean, it's the way the roster was constructed, the way the team was constructed. But there are guys that you're just shaking your head like how and why that was not supposed to be. There's other guys that, we took flyers on that were really going to give us this grit, this TWTW, this moxie, whatever you want to call it. And it's all smoke and mirrors. And obviously it's found out to be truth eventually throughout a season like this. And here we are at Memorial Day, kind of the official start of summer, of course. And, the grind starting, you're going to get to the dog days in a couple months. And when you don't have the track record, man, when you don't have, I guess the back of the baseball card, as Han used to say, like you get figured out fast. And some of these guys that the Sox brought in to change the culture, to change whatever, I mean, they've been figured out and well exposed. The starting pitching staff has been kind of like Swiss cheese aside from, Fetty and Crochet. So, look, I mean, you could side with Pedro that, hey, they are flat, but when you go up against a stud pitcher in a tough organization and, that's where
the timing's bad for that.
Exactly. That just wasn't, I just felt like that was not if you're going to do something like that, that wasn't after that game. But we can move on to Clevenger. We could stick with this. Both are poison.
I think we pretty much, I don't want to beat that horse too much. Pedro gives us some very quotable quotes every week. This one was a bit of a doozy. And, like I said, everybody and their brothers kind of covered it. We said our piece. I think it's time to move on.
So Drew, thank you, Drew, for jumping in. Drew says, what do they have to sell? In all caps. So I think
we hope for a lot more at this point.
He's screaming. Yeah, we did. And Clevenger was a guy that I think some people said, well, I don't get it. I can't stomach it. It makes zero sense. There's a bunch of other guys that are out there looking for major league contracts that even maybe are in our system. I don't know. But guys that we could have brought in besides Clevenger if you just wanted to eat innings. And so I got from a lot of people that were pro Clevenger, hey, this is a guy we're going to flip. Look what he did for the Sox in a 101 loss season that nobody wanted in the offseason. Look what we can get. We might be able to get something at the deadline. This is great. He's going to prove his worth and everything. And I don't know how much, by the way, Clevenger scratched on Monday, elbow soreness. So who knows if we'll ever see Clevenger again, what his timeline is. I don't know if you're on Facebook a lot for White Sox takes. If you do a lot of that, I kind of dip in and out. I see a lot of stuff. I'm far more active, obviously, on Twitter X. And I don't want to call anybody out on your take is your take, but sometimes the take, I have to raise my eyebrows and say, that's interesting. I kind of want to earmark that and I'm not going to give away who this was, their name or anything. This is what it is. But this was a take that I saw when Clevenger was brought back to the Sox. This just a couple months ago, whatever it was, a month and a half. Okay, this is what I saw from somebody on a Sox Facebook fan page. Getz worked his magic and added another ace. And the fanboys are crying. Sox fans are the biggest babies. Please comment if you disagree so I can make a list of the fake fans and charge you double to rejoin the bandwagon. The Central is winnable. Give Getz a chance. So I have to go back to that quite often because, Clevenger kind of threw a clunker recently and now, scratched due to elbow soreness. I mean, that was a real statement when Clevenger was brought back.
Yeah. The only thing I got, I mean, That's a doozy.
It is, man.
I
It is
think I probably
priceless.
would have screenshotted that one too. Because I would have been, and you know, I'm gonna have to off air. I'm gonna need some more from you on that one because
Okay.
I personally am not one to. Well, I don't normally like to say "I told you so," but that one deserves a finger wag, if nothing else. But
I'm sure I
I
haven't.
mean,
I
oof,
mean, I bet you
that's
he
a
got
tough take.
absolutely bodied by
Yeah.
you know people that
Oh,
reply regularly in that world. But yeah, that's that one was. I just and with this Clevenger stuff, I go back to it, and I mean, we all had those thoughts. I would say. Before the season of like maybe we catch some folks off guard and maybe in our division we hang tough. Outside the division is going to be difficult, but no way. I mean that was magic right there. That was mistake magic almost. So
yeah.
all right, so let's move on to that and let's get to Gats because I thought
And
this was very
sorry,
interesting.
I hate to,
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but if I were to do something like that, it wouldn't be anything more than, the this age poorly post.
Yeah, I mean
So
that's pretty much what it is. So this is what Getz had to say on Baltimore being one of the models for the White Sox. Ongoing organization development. I don't know if you saw this. I thought it was really interesting, and I checked in with a diehard Baltimore Oriole friend of mine just to get what his comments were. So this is what Getz said on using Baltimore kind of as a model as the Sox rebuild here once again and move forward. You certainly want to learn from those organizations as you continue to build your own. We have a model that we will tweak along the way. It's very Han-like speak, but we feel very strongly with the plan that we have. Okay, so nothing, too forward or alarming there, but did referencing Baltimore and talking about how that could be a model. Well, I talked with a buddy of mine that I got to know pretty well in Washington, D.C., lifelong Baltimore Orioles fan. His name's Michael Johnson, and great Baltimore Orioles fan. Really, I mean, you talk about a guy that's, diehard, is really invested in this team for a long, long time. And I asked him just in a message, I said, this is what our general manager is saying about Baltimore. Like, why does that make sense? Like, what did you see with your organization that did that? What they did well? Why other teams might want to follow? And this is what he kind of said. Everything turned around with Mike Elias, former Astros general manager. And the more I've read, listened, the more folks give credit to his assistant GM, Sid Meigel, Mejdil, and their approach to homegrown talent through analytics, scouting, and player development. Three things that the Sox haven't really done well the last several years. And he goes on to talk a lot about their drafting and what they've done with Elias and him almost saying, my friend, like, I cannot believe we got a former Astros GM. I can't believe they went out and they got that and basically said, go do whatever you want to do. Like, here, just figure it out. So do you see, like, it's just a snippet of the conversation. Do you see anything in what the White Sox are doing right now where you're like, oh yeah, all those things are in place? And I think we are. We don't see it right now, but moving forward, I think we're going in the right direction in terms of building a winning model.
yeah, I actually do, and I'm glad you brought this up because this is something that I've been thinking about for a while. I noticed that a lot of Sox fans like to have that conversation about how the White Sox have not been able to develop. And that's not 100% true. There are a handful of guys. Obviously, they don't develop well. There's a lot of guys that we've been told are supposed to be absolute monsters, and just this is 100% a hit, and they don't do it. And in recent years now, obviously, time will tell. But these last couple of draft classes, since Mike Shirley took over, Mike Shirley was hired in like September or October of 19, right? His first draft was 2020, And I know Ian and James talked a little bit about this last night, but if you look beyond 2020, it was just a weird 5-round, 5-round draft. And we've seen now some of those guys kind of make their way up. But going back to like 22 and now 23, I personally believe that the White Sox, and here's my thing, I hope they draft a position player this year. I know there are some guys that are going to say, no, let the White Sox draft more pitching because they're looking at what we're going through right now. But I honestly believe that there is a full starting rotation for, say, I would say a very competitive starting rotation, let's say by 26. And maybe not next year, but the following year, I do believe we have a full starting rotation in our system right now. And that's including Garrett Crochet, unless Chris gets an offer he can't refuse on him, which, who knows, might be a possibility. I'd hate to see it. He's still under control.
I'd hate to see it too, but it's something that, we're almost forced to talk about because it's the White Sox. But I want them to purposefully build around a pitcher for the future and with intention. And I would love for Crochet to be that guy.
But and that's the thing. I mean, when you want to look at the positive direction and the possibility of development, that word is kind of one that's a little weird, but I think they have identified talent better. Instead of going after these high ceiling guys who could possibly have really low floors as well, they have found the guys with the higher floors that maybe might excel to a high ceiling, but if not, are not going to be a complete and total miss and might be better than serviceable. And then in that group, there are guys that are stepping up. Now, again, a lot of these guys are only in single, double A, possibly getting in the, starting their time in triple A, now. But as it looks right now, a lot of these guys are moving their way up and they're doing what they need to do to get things done. And it looks like they could possibly be performers at the MLB level. They're just evaluating talent so much better. And there is more depth in the system. And there's also more personnel to be available to these guys when they need, something that we hadn't seen before with, during the Tony La Russa years. He decided that he didn't need all this help and they actually cut those numbers down. So there was less staff on hand. Ian and I talked about this. I believe it was not this past offseason, but the season before, where, some of the minor league teams during camp, the minor league players weren't getting to start their days until well into the late morning and early afternoon because everybody was focused on the major league team. There wasn't enough bodies for them. So, I mean, if you want to talk about those kind of things in positive direction, I think it's there. I think Getz has kind of made some good moves in his, his directors and his personal staff that he keeps around, Bannister, guys of that nature. I just don't know until we get to when these guys graduate. It's difficult to say. And I'm sorry if I missed. Am I misunderstanding your question at all?
No, I think you're helping me out with. I like your take on Shirley, and that's refreshing, and that's great to hear. And I think that's something that I think a lot of Sox fans, I think, will find comforting. As we move forward, and really, that's where we're headed. We can't. The past is the past. There's been a lot of screw ups. There's been a lot of problems, and I know just about every organization. Hindsight is 2020 of things that went wrong. I mean, even talked to my buddy Michael about the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, he rattled off, a bunch of things that just didn't really go right for them. I mean, even the Machado deal. He's like, man, that Manny Machado deal, like, we didn't even really make out on that one. There was a lot of misses. But, Drew brought up in the chat, and it's something that Michael talked about with the Orioles. I mean, they hit on their drafts. I mean, they were fortunate enough, and they did well by those draft picks a few years in a row, which, being a horrible team this season, like the Sox will be, that does them no good in the draft moving forward, which is, a different model, and it's frustrating, and it just, you don't want to dwell on it too much because it really will make you go crazy. But the analytics thing of the comparison with Baltimore, that's got to be, something from Houston, because, years ago, here you go, yeah, cigar.
Somebody
Danny
commented it was the Jerry Stogie.
Still waiting for the pipe, just kind of like the Professor pipe or the Sherlock Holmes pipe, just for you to kind of, just like a trifecta of different means to get your tobacco. But, you do you. And maybe for different situations, like if it's an inquisitive situation, you'd bring the pipe out and just really think on it. But anyway,
trying to make me look smarter than I am.
I don't want to micromanage, how you do your heaters, but
hey, man, I can say some dumb stuff. So whatever I need to do to get, the idea that I might have something smart to say.
So, years ago, I think there were numbers that were put out about how many people are working in those types of analytical departments, how many people are employed, and how little the Sox pay attention to worlds like that compared to other teams that have had success, in MLB. So that's where I don't know with the Sox. I don't think things are trending in the right direction in that world, and how many people they employ and all that. But in terms of Shirley and moving in the positive direction that way, that's great. That's good to hear.
Yeah, well, and Ian will tell you this too. He's always been one to kind of point out the fact that when those numbers came out, especially when it was talked about like analytics departments and how the White Sox only had like 5 employees when there were other teams out there that had like 28 or 35, whatever it was. It might have been slightly misleading as well, because they did have guys who were, into analytics and very analytics driven, but they were under the umbrella of a different title. So, you can take that however you want to take it. But I think the difference is there were some teams that just had those guys that were specifically devoted to one job and one job only, and not trying to wear many hats. And I think that's kind of where things have started to change a little bit. But, it's the White Sox. It's the White Sox. It's going to take convince anyone that has been around for as long as we have or longer that they're going to do anything that's going to put them in the right direction. Because during the Jerry years, we've only had a handful of playoff appearances in, 41, going on 42 years, 43 years, whatever it is. It's difficult to even try. I could say what I need to say over and over again to try to convince you. You're not going to believe me until you see it.
There were some signs again since the last time we talked. I think on Thursday there were some sell the team bozo signs with Jerry.
That was fantastic.
Did you see that? Jerry's mug with the big clown nose. It looked like it was at the 300 level where they were unfurling some signs, and security was right on top of that. All the videos were out on social media and stuff of how quickly security got to that. I love it. I'm sorry. Maybe it's stupid and I shouldn't love it, but I love it. I hope it happens every single home game. And
I actually retweeted that, saying that the internet never forgets, because it doesn't. So you can try to hustle up and get that down as quickly as possible, but it was out there. It was seen. A lot of people retweeted it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen more and more as the season, I think someone even said they were in line on, was it Sunday or Monday, and a sign was confiscated. So they're on the watch for these signs.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're now being told. Well, they've probably been told, even since last year, to be on the lookout.
On the so maybe you'll see the signs, but the guns are slipping through it.
Exactly. Let the gun go, keep the sign. To me, it's ridiculous. It's like we can get into the whole meta stuff of why even talk about sell the team, but to me it's something more than the literal sell the team. It's just the absolute anger, disgust with Jerry, with the front office, with the organization for the years that you quoted and the lack of playoff appearances. So those signs will continue to pop up, I believe, throughout the summer.
Yeah, and I'm in 100% agreement with you on that. It's more of a, it's just a one, coverall statement for fans to, show their ire for the Jerry Reinsdorf ownership years.
Can I switch you? You might have to open up another pack or get another cigar or whatever. But I
Well, the
want
cigar
to.
wasn't cutting it, so I have one ready.
I wanted to switch to a favorite of yours and Eloy
Uh-oh.
Jimenez, and
Oh no.
you know,
Yep. All right.
William put in the chat here, wasn't Zach Collins a can't miss prospect too? And boy, do I remember Zach Collins and listening to Chuck podcasts on Zach Collins and what he's going to be and what he's going to bring and everything. But did you, in your mind, was Eloy Jimenez a can't miss? Were you like, that's it? This guy is a monster. He is going to be a force for a decade on the South Side.
Yeah, it felt
Yeah.
that way. It
Yeah.
felt that way. I mean, maybe not 100% can't miss. That's the only reason I'm hesitant on like really saying yes. Only because again, thanks to Ian and FutureSox, I paid attention to
Mm-hmm.
prospects at that time, and there was always the old Han quote: "Check all the boxes," and he wasn't checking all the boxes, and I saw enough
Mm-hmm.
of where
Interesting.
we knew the defense just wasn't
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
But the bat was supposed to play. Nobody expected him. I didn't think anybody in the world expected him to just be injured, where he was, only playing 50% of
Yeah.
the time. So yeah, I did kind of feel like he was one of those guys, at least for the bat, and it unfortunately has not worked out.
I talked to a close friend of mine that's a lifelong Cubs fan. He's a season ticket holder. A very devoted Cubs fan. He was in Cleveland for Game 7, and when the trade first happened, I got together with him and I said, the Cubs were high at that point. The Cubs were really high, and Sox were low. And I think he was just trying to make me feel good and just said, you guys got some good players there. I mean, that's a hell of a deal. And we talked a little bit more, and I kept bringing up Eloy Jimenez, and wow, this guy's got power. How soon could he make his way? But my buddy kept moving the conversation to Dylan Cease. He's like, that's the guy. Dylan Cease is the guy that you are really going to love. He's like, everybody's talking about Dylan Cease and how crazy his stuff is. I think Rick Sutcliffe was going on rants about what a gem this guy is. I mean, to have this in our system. And so that's when I started paying a little bit more attention to Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez. But I mean, I just drank the Kool-Aid, man. I was just really wrapped up in because the power, the home runs, the ease of what his swing was and how big of a guy he was. And it's like, wow, I just can't wait. I mean, just to have that in the lineup. But we talk again about Eloy Jimenez because just a couple days ago we find out it's going to be now 4 to 6 weeks with this hamstring situation, and how Eloy talked about when he tweaked the hamstring. It was the first day he's felt 100% since coming back from the abductor injury.
That should have just been left unsaid.
I mean,
it should have been left unsaid.
So I mean, we talked about it, I think, the last time you and I, had a show, and I'm done. I am absolutely done caring about what Eloy Jimenez can or cannot do for the Chicago White Sox. I mean, it is just a thing at this point. If he shows up, comes back and does something, if they DFA him, if they trade him, who wants him,
Thanks,
what he's worth. I mean, honestly, it just, I cannot devote any more time and energy to what could he be if healthy. That whole narrative, that's done. I mean, that's over.
I don't even really care anymore what he could be if healthy, because that conversation has happened way too many times. And who knows if he can be anything for anyone. Like you said, you're done with what he can do for the White Sox. I'm kind of curious as if he has anything to offer anyone at this point. I almost feel like his MLB days might be numbered to the point of he might not. I mean, sure, somebody's probably going to give him a chance when he leaves here, but how much of a chance is he going to get? I don't really know. It's just you. There's no the only track record that is there is a track record of injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could. You really can't get anything of value for him because no one's going to risk it because they have no confidence in the return. No confidence. I mean, and when healthy, which now we're finding out that he wasn't even really healthy when he came back. I mean, his bat was a big old nothing burger. You know,
Yeah,
it ground balls. You know, he'd rope something every now and then, but a few home runs, but nothing like what we anticipated. I mean, a shadow of its predictable self.
yeah. Yeah, and I keep saying there's been a few people ask. Drew has kind of been beating this horse all night tonight. Is there any value? Is there any trade value? And it's like every player we bring up, he's like, "Well, who do they have? What do we have to sell? Is there any trade value in Aloy?" And I'd almost say no.
I would
Now
agree with you. Yeah.
there's still we're roughly 7 weeks or so, I want to say, away from the trade deadline.
But he's 4 to 6 weeks away.
And he's 4 to 6 weeks out.
Yeah.
So we're looking for him at deadline. No, at this point, you're almost better off keeping him. Hope he has a decent second half, and then you flip him mid season or in the off season. But
Yeah. I
again,
think so.
how much is a half a season of him just going to town really going to get you? Because there's that track record of injury, and any team that's going to take him, it's the first thing they're going to point out when they go into negotiations with Chris Getz.
Yep. I just think that we're just not going to get anything for him. He is going to just kind of fade into the netherworld, and it's just like that. Almost like with Moncada. I don't think the Sox are going to re-sign him for whatever the $25 million option it is. And that's it. It's gone. So thank you. Thank you for the few memories. And that's it. Aloy and Moncada, the same type of fate at the end of this year. I mean, there are some guys with value. There are absolutely guys with value. Clutch brought up, I think, Fetty. Fetty's a guy that, we've talked about. I think Tommy Pham is your guy. I mean, I think he's going to bring back something. He seems like a guy that actually wants to hit and wants to play.
And postseason experience as well.
Absolutely. I think it's just a matter of time before Tommy Pham is off the Chicago White Sox. This is just a springboard. This is just an audition for where he's going to go next.
Yeah.
So
I could see the White Sox. I mean, if they want to unload Aloy and Moncada, I could see them eating a big chunk of their contracts just to get some money off the books. I don't really know. Getting rid of those guys, getting rid of any of the guys, like even Michael Kopech, like we talked about. Kopech might have some value, but it's not going to be anywhere close to what we were hoping for.
If I smoked Danny, I would light up two heaters right now for you bringing up Michael Kopech. That's a trigger for me.
Well, friend. It is a trigger for me too, and fortunately, I had just put one out, so I'm not trying to go down that road again, man.
All right.
I try to go with the cigars to not take the dart right to the lung. Work on the mouth cancer more than we will the lung cancer. But
do you dip? Do you do any dip or chew or?
No, not since high school football, man.
All right, I'm not trying to get in any more bad habits, but I'm just seeing where else we can.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I have some crutches, man, and
I get you.
They're gonna be the end of me. I have some things.
We all have vices, man. We all have vices.
But Michael Kopech. I mean, I don't even know if you bundled him with somebody else, maybe you get a little bump in return. But they got that trade value calculator that's out there that now has become a subscription service, and I happen to pay for it at the beginning of the year. I don't post my trade propositions most of the time, although I haven't checked on one recently. But last I checked, I think Michael Kopech, and they're doing like a weekly update on these guys now. And I think it was only like a week ago. Michael Kopech's got like a negative 1.8 the trade value against anybody. So like
that's
you
believable.
have to package him with someone according to the trade calculator
Yeah,
website.
the big thing about moving him to the bullpen for a lot of folks that I saw was, wow, this guy is made for the relief role. He can be a sprinter, not a marathon guy. He throws upper 90s. He can hit triple digits. He can be a little nasty with breaking stuff when it works and he's got control of it. He's a guy that we could probably flip, because people are going to want bullpen arms, which they do. I feel like bullpen arms are always gobbled up. They're like the first to go. You always want to be strengthening your bullpen unless you had a notable injury. Like I think maybe it was Clutch that brought up Acuna Jr., who's out, right, for the rest of the year. And maybe that's Tommy Pham. Maybe the Atlanta Braves are already trying to make those conversations because they need an immediate fill on a guy from the starting roster. But Kopech, he just had a meltdown this past weekend in the Baltimore series, and it wasn't a walks issue. I mean, he threw home runs. He couldn't locate it. I think he hit a guy. I mean, I have zero confidence in him, especially when you've got runners on. And I hate to say that I saw it coming, but if you have no control as a starter, how do you automatically start having control as a reliever just because you're pitching in shorter spurts? It doesn't make sense to me. He just cannot control his stuff.
No, we talked about that. We both of us, I think we were in 100% agreement that
yeah.
Moving him to the pen was probably questionable. If you don't have and it's always been obvious with him. If he doesn't have his stuff, you see it right away. And now coming out of the bullpen in a game situation where you're up 3 runs or less to try to make him the closer, and he doesn't have it right away, and you absolutely have to face 3 batters if you're coming in a clean inning, well, that's not going to work out well.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have it right away, if you see, and you'll see it in the first 3 or 4 pitches, he doesn't have his best stuff, it's over. It's over for him. He's not regaining it. It's not coming back. So I don't know, man. It's just a shame. We hoped we were wrong, but unfortunately, in our statements about him, we've been mostly right.
I didn't want to be right, but
No.
you watch him enough and I don't know if it's a pitcher's intuition, or just from like following this guy and watching this guy and knowing that it's a different beast and knowing the head games that they've played with him and what they've told him to prepare for and how he mentally prepared for being a starter. And then all of a sudden you're going to turn him into a reliever. There's a different way you prepare your body, mentally, everything. And it's for a guy, especially like Kopech, it's tough to just switch that on him. He's going to say all the right things publicly, but behind closed doors, I think he was pissed, maybe more at himself that he just couldn't figure this out.
Well, that's probably true too. I would imagine that, you've prepared to be a starter pretty much your whole life, your whole career. That would be kind of, it would be disappointing, but at the same time, the reality is he's having the same issues as a closer as he did as a starter. If the command isn't there, if you don't have a secondary pitch, a lot of people said you put him in the closer role, he doesn't have to worry about going 6, 7, 8 innings. He's only got to go 1, which means he can go all out. Well, that's fine, but all out for him is a fastball that he doesn't always command well.
Yeah, he doesn't know where it's going.
So, if you don't have a secondary pitch that you can rely on day in and day out, and all you've got is this 101, 102 mile an hour fastball, it's not going to work well. Maybe he figures it out somewhere down the line because they did throw him in this position kind of overnight and said, oh, here it is. Here you go. You're in the bullpen now. We're hoping you're going to be a closer, but we're going to use you in the 7th. We're going to use you in the 8th. We're going to use you in the 9th. We're going to use you in safe situations. We're going to use you in non-safe situations. That right there is enough to kind of screw with a guy's head. I'm sorry, but if closers are built to be closers, usually they need that title. And
Trey is all over it in the chat. LA or Tampa will fix him. And Danny, I don't know if you know this, but when White Sox players leave the Sox organization, a lot of them seem to do fairly well with other teams. And maybe Ronaldo Lopez is a good example right now in Atlanta. I haven't seen him recently, but he was on a pretty hot streak there. where he seemed to be lights out as a starter. And there are other examples, both player position or position players, and pitchers. So
Well, and the
I
thing
wouldn't be
about Ronaldo
surprised.
too is everybody was acting like Ronaldo was like 100 years old, and it was just because he was part of the Sox organization for a long time that he's really not that old. And he got that LASIK done. He seemed to figure something out. I think the Sox gave up on him a little too soon. That's just my opinion.
William asks about Bannister, and I don't know enough about Bannister, and I know his pedigree and where he came from and everything, but Bannister was supposed to be this pitching whisperer, as William mentioned, and this might be a bigger conversation to bring up when we're maybe starting to kind of wind down a little bit on this episode, but what role because as a fan watching and like what how much of a leash does Cats have? And is Bannister just a guy that's like, well, there's really nothing I can do with these guys? Is it just a word? Is it, trust the process with him that we just, he couldn't maybe do what he needed to do with these specific guys. But once he's got his hands on guys at a younger age that are coming to the system, then we're going to really see the magic that he can work.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, when Bannister was brought in, I think at least the way I felt about it was more that he might be helping guys a little bit behind the scenes, but Ethan Katz is still the pitching coach. Bannister, I felt like, was a guy who was going to spend more time uh, addressing needs as far as going out and finding the pitchers that are going to suit the White Sox organization and what we can do to maybe take a guy who's a
Like the
little
Tim
rough around the
Hills of the
edges.
world.
I mean, yeah, and you know what? I went a little hard on Tim Hill this year, but he's been fairly serviceable, especially if he's used in the right situation. Unfortunately, the times that he gets touched up a little bit, I feel like he didn't belong in the game to begin with. But
Maybe he's just unlucky, like Aaron Bummer
he's
was
another
for so
guy
long.
you might be able to get a slight amount of value out of him because he has. I don't know. I'm trying to find some bright spots here, but Bannister, I think, like, yeah, he knows pitching. He, obviously going back to his childhood with his dad, being a Sox legend, Sox great, Floyd. But my thing is I always thought he was kind of there to identify guys who would fit the White Sox budget.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we could tweak something to get the most out of him, type of guy. Not so much the guy who's gonna he wasn't he wasn't the guy who was gonna turn careers around completely, or take a guy who maybe was a 60 grade pitcher overall as a prospect and turn him into an 80 grade like that. I didn't see him as that.
Okay, just maybe to back to what we were discussing, how thin the Sox were in different analytical departments or different hands on deck. This was the Sox trying to catch up with the times in terms of bringing different eyes in and bolstering different positions, and maybe even just who Bannister worked with in what environment they like that moving forward. Perhaps I you know I shake my head because I just haven't been seeing the results, especially from certain guys that have failed recently with the Sox. It's like, how come we couldn't figure anything out with him? And he might go on to a different team now, and they'll unlock something. Maybe it's
Very
just a
possible.
better. I don't know, better defense, better team, better chemistry. Maybe things aren't flat where they go. I don't know. There's always these other variables, but it's starting to get kind of frustrating in my mind with
Yeah.
the
Oh,
just kind of the
and then
lack
there's
of
guys like
production.
Sammy Peralta, who they scoop up and DFA
Then
2
DFA.
days later. I mean, come on, like I don't, we could try to, we could try to unwrap all this stuff and peel back the layers of the onion. And I don't really know if we're ever going to get to the truth. We're never
No,
going to get to the core of all this stuff.
yeah,
But
there's a lot of rabbit holes out there.
there's
Sacks are
obviously a disconnect deep within this team that probably will take a lot longer than a season or two to fix.
Oh,
And I don't
absolutely.
know if the right people are in place or not. I want to believe that the direction is going in the right way, but
Well,
time
and
will tell.
that's kind of that goes on what we just started this evening with this episode with our manager Pedro Grifol, and I'd even say Getz, but I know people are like, well, like our dear friend from the Facebook post, let Getz cook, give him a chance, let him do some things. I never really thought he was the right guy for the position, based off of what my buddy Michael, the Orioles fan, had said. It was getting a successful GM from a successful organization and getting smart, successful people around him. That's when the ball started rolling. And for whatever reason, I get, again, we could probably list them. It was Getz that was the guy. It was a lazy, apathetic, decision to not even do a true vetting, to not even do a true search and just push Getz in. And this
Do
is
you
the
mean
guy.
he's not the guy to get it done overnight because the fans deserve that?
Right. The fans need something that is going to be a quick turnaround. I'm not going to be around forever. We're going to bring Getz in because he won't have to get to know everybody and learn names of people. If that's the big holdup, have everybody wear a name tag. In the organization, put out an email, over the next 5 days, everybody's got to wear a name tag because the new GM, the successful GM from a different organization, just needs to get caught up to speed. So just have your name tag on. I mean, there we go. Problem solved.
Hello, my name is not Hey You.
Hey, big dog. Over and over. Yeah. So before I wanted to hit one last thing with you before we kind of said goodbye. And it was this crazy ending to the Thursday game. Did you see this?
Yeah.
Sox were down big late in the game. They had a rally going, and this was the first game of the Baltimore series. And I'm watching it live, and I was definitely glued in because it looked like they had ducks on the pond. It looked like they were nipping on the heels here. Kimbrel was in the game. Could Kimbrel ruin it here and fall apart against his old team?
I mean, they put up 4.
Yeah. And
put up 4 and the guy's on base.
Exactly. Schriffen was getting excited, much to a lot of people's disgust. But
I mean, the wind blows and Schriffen gets excited. But,
easy. He's still learning.
Listen, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I mean, I got to agree. Just tone it down a hair, dude.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Yeah. When it went down, he was kind of, I thought, wishy-washy, where Hawk would have had an aneurysm, died in the booth. God. It would have been the talk of the town, So I've never seen an ending like that. I've never seen a situation like that. And I've watched a ton of baseball, as so many people have. Everyone knows the situation. Infield fly, basically, infield fly rule. Shortstop goes to get it. Vaughn runs into him coming back to the bag and was called out for interference. I mean,
it was the fielder that actually brushed him with his glove as he went by.
So was it a base path thing? And why, if it's an infield fly rule, why is that just null and void then? Infield fly rule, almost ball dead, you're out. You don't even have to worry about interference. No one can advance, nothing. When the ball lands, you could let it drop. The batter's out.
You could. You could let that ball drop and the idea of that is you're not supposed to
get a double play
and try to turn it into double play. The umpires would have got together and said, nope. And had that ball dropped, that might have been the issue. But, the thing is he said he had to sidestep Vaughn as Vaughn kind of, and Vaughn's like, wow, I was making my way back to the bag. He was pretty gingerly, pretty very leisurely and slowly. Vaughn uses the excuse of, well, I had to pay attention to the pop-up, make my way back to the bag, and he's behind me. I don't see him. It's fine, but it was.
So you like the call? Did you like the call?
No, I absolutely hate the call. I think it was atrocious. I think it was egregious. I think it should have never been allowed to happen.
You're going all Jackie Childs on us here.
No, the thing is do I think the umpires, if you follow the letter of the law, i.e. the MLB rule book, they weren't wrong, right? But as we found out the following day,
Yes.
MLB reached out to the White Sox and said, yeah, there's room for interpretation on that rule. There's
Exactly.
room,
Read the room.
There's room for, a little bit of leeway on that. And they, you know what? They didn't get together. Like Ozzy said, hey, there's 4 of you out there. One guy made the call, 4 of you come together, and somebody says, hey, man, you know what? We can't end this game like this. But they didn't. They had their little solidarity moment, and they walked off the field, basically giving everybody on the diamond, including some of the Baltimore guys were, we just won the game, but like they all looked around like, did we really want to win like that?
Right.
Including the shortstop that caught the ball was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Like,
it'd be interesting
on,
if in the NFL, like you can decline a penalty, right? If the Baltimore manager just like declined that, said no, we want to play this one out. We decline that. We'll win it the hard way. That's fine. Something to think about in the offseason. I wanted to see Pedro run out of the dugout like George Brett, though, during the Pine Tar game. I wanted to see him just go ballistic.
Wouldn't that have been awesome?
Instead of choosing the moment of like, you're going to call your team flat and do all that. That was your time to just go nuts, go absolutely crazy. If you were going to spend that energy in the Baltimore series, set the tone. First game, you had the moment. It was right there on a silver platter. Just go crazy. Turn the hat backwards, get right in their face. I mean, I would have loved to see that.
By the way, here, but right before we end, the White Sox, because of starting the game late because of a rain delay, are now on the top of the 9th, trailing 7-2. And there's a bit of a downpour going on out there at the U.S. Comiscular Cell Field.
They'll wait till bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, and they'll call a delay.
Hey, why not wait till the Sox get within to make it 7-5 game, and then decide rain delay, it's over.
Yeah, it's coming down real nice here. Yeah, we'll probably end things. You could watch the end of this game, and folks that are enjoying the audio, you already know the outcome of this rain-soaked Tuesday game. But can't thank the folks enough in the comments. Great stuff tonight. Love the chat.
Luis Robert hit a home run in his first AAA at bat tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
Wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, that's him coming back to this team. Boy, that's going to be a real shot in the arm. I wouldn't say 74 is reachable, but 58 might be reachable. 57, 58.
Right now they're on pace for 42. So
all right, well,
that'll get
him 45, 46. We'll see what happens with some of the other folks. I completely forgot about Moncada. I don't even check in on that guy.
Whatever. Let's keep it moving.
All right. Hey,
sorry, man.
If you're listening,
I'm gonna run out of smokes. If
you're watching live, we do appreciate it. Do us a favor, subscribe to the FutureSox YouTube channel. It means a ton. We do this live on Tuesdays, 9 p.m. Watch Twitch, FutureSox YouTube channel. Subscribe, Twitter X, follow us. Great stuff. A lot of folks doing some really solid work, with everything in the pipeline. The excitement, you know what's happening with AA and a lot of rising stars. It's beyond 35th and Shields, that's for sure. And there's so many people contributing. So get involved now. Find us wherever you find your podcasts. He's Danny Miller on Twitter X at Danny Miller FS. I am Nick Murawski at Nick_GGTB. Hey, until next time, go Sox.